from individuals and corporations. We are set up, and and as well as, I mean, you guys have been very supportive for us for a very long time from the county, particularly around our fresh food, produce kinds of things. In terms of that, the city has done some of that as well. But by and large, it's the private sector, corporate community, but most of it's individuals. We've got about anywhere from 35 to 50,000 active donors in our system that can give us $5, can give us $100,000. And that's really been the breadth and the backbone of it, so that we are able to do what we do, which is find surplus food in this country, whether it's private sector or government surplus, and get it to people that are hungry. And it's going to be real interesting going forward what this looks like. We're used to the recession of 07, 08 was, we kind of can learn from that, that we're going to struggle, but at the same time, people are very generous for basic needs, particularly food in this community in particular. So the good news is there's food out there. That's the beauty of all of this. The bad news is the numbers are staggeringly higher than they were. In April, we were up 38% in terms of the pounds of food we distributed from the year before. So for us, that's a big increase. And it takes a lot of people to do that. And we've been very lucky to have our agency stay open and to have the National Guard here. They have been a lifesaver.
So you and I have been friends for a long time. I mean, we've known each other for, good Lord, 30 years now, at least, I'd say. I mean, since the early 90s at least that I can think of. You've been at the food bank the entire time. You mentioned earlier you've been there 36 of the 40 years it's been open. Talk to us and to the viewers that are watching about the changes, the evolution of the food bank over the years. And if you can, talk about the evolution of the funding stream as well. But I mean, this has been, this is not the same food bank that it was. I'm sorry, food.
Good luck. MidOhio Food Collective.
Your new branding, the Food Collaborative, but it's not the same, and that's the reason for the branding, the change in the branding. But this is not, when you got there in the 1980s, this is not the same place. But if you could take us a bit through the time frame and what it's been over the years and to what it is today.
Okay. Food banking started with one man named John Van Hengel in Phoenix, Arizona. He was at a Catholic church. He was rehabbing from a back injury. He was from Minnesota. And he was in the warmth of Arizona to recover. And he started helping their soup kitchen, there. And he started collecting more food than that kitchen could use at that church. And so he got the bright idea of finding a centralized warehouse to put it in and redistributing it to other charities. That was in the late 70s. Our food bank opened in April of 80. But the whole food banking principle was designed on getting the surplus food that the food industry was throwing away and capturing that food and getting it to people. And then the evolution became, well, you didn't get enough donated food to really make out a menu of items. So in 1982, in the undercroft of the cathedral with Bishop Herrmann, we started Operation Feed Food Drive. And that really got it started around the community collecting food. And about the same time, the government had surplus food, the infamous cheese giveaway of the 80s. It was around the fact that they had a lot of commodities in surplus. So when you look at the industry, you look at the community, and then ultimately the government coming together through a food bank to distribute that food out to our partners who got it to people that were hungry. So we really were in the emergency feed business, looking at those sources. And then when all that didn't work, we got donations and we went in the marketplace and bought food. We didn't ever got enough peanut butter, for example, and those kind of things. So we would buy to have more. It's evolved. In 2011, we got asked from here to lead the charge to find the next 1 billion pounds of produce. About that time, we were getting all this data from the industry that was changing. All the computerization was happening, just-in-time inventories, efficient consumer response. All those buzzwords mean that there was going to be less surplus because they were getting smarter about how much they had to buy, what it needed to get to, because the computerization gave them the ability to analyze that faster. So we got less donations of dry goods, cereal, those kinds of things. But we also discovered that there were billions and billions of pounds of produce in the fields that we could get our hands on that was being plowed under, harvested, and not sold. So we shifted, and we led the effort from Columbus and Franklin County to really say, how do we do that across the country? And at the same time, we were one of 3 food banks doing diabetes research around, with Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation and Feeding America, the national level, and Ohio State here. We partnered, and we partnered with the Primary One Health, center system, and with the Central Ohio Diabetes at the time, to really understand if you're food insecure, could you manage your diabetes? Well, those 2 strategies of finding more fresh food and understanding the impact that food had on your health if you were food insecure, and that we could help. We had such positive outcomes in our study that we blended those 2 together into our new DNA. And that really became a food as health strategy for us. We used the program. That's why the MidOhio pharmacy got started. We, during that study, realized doctors never ask any questions about food. They don't ask if you have enough food to eat in your house, and you don't want to tell them, because you tell them when you got kids, I don't have enough to eat, you may have a children's services call happen to you, and so you're fearful of having of disclosing that. But we got that. We also learned that these people were suffering from stress because of not knowing where their next meal could come from, and we could make that go away by making sure they knew they had regular access. So that shifted our thinking. We're now the 5th largest, and of the 200 food banks that are part of the Feeding America system, 5th largest distributor of produce in the United States. So we have made such a commitment to do that. We've had great help from the state of Ohio, who for 2 decades has been giving our state association money to clear the surplus of produce from Ohio farmers. So they get a benefit out of this. They pick it, they pack it, we pay for all those costs, and their food, instead of being left in the fields, is coming in and getting out to folks. But it also then forced us to shift the way we were doing our work. So we now have 1,200 free produce markets set up around our 20 counties. About half of those are right here in Franklin County, to really have people quick access, and they get to pick and choose the product. That's all had to shift during this. Now we got to pre-bag it, because you can't sit there and have people touch everything, and with all the issues we have around safe distancing. But the idea that you could have fresh food, and then that we could measure that. And what we're now learning in all of that is, because for the viewers and everybody, 36% of the people we help, which is some 500,000 people a year, 36% of them only come once a year. They get this idea people get free food and they're taking advantage, and all those stories are not true. 70% of our people come 5 times or less a year. So we're really trying to say, now we want you coming, because the data from the frequency of visits and the matching the healthcare data that we're doing, if you come 12 to 24 times, we're seeing weight loss, we're seeing A1Cs get better, hypertension issues. So we've now built ourselves in the evolution of this as a low cost, high value healthcare strategy. We can save Medicaid a lot of money on their diabetic patients if we can get them to use more fresh food. And we're only measuring the patient, but we're feeding the whole family. So there's even additional benefits that we're not even yet figured out how to calculate. So our whole new strategy and our whole new thinking is, can we in fact, measure our success in health impact, not just in numbers of people served and pounds of food out the door. So we're trying to shift all that and figure out how to do that in partnership with the healthcare community. And that's the big evolution and shift to where we are. I never thought when we had a food as health strategy that a pandemic would change the whole way of thinking about all of it. But unfortunately, we were well positioned that we have good food, we've got fresh food, and we're in a position to figure out how to handle it. We just got to do it differently than we were previously. Huge shift over the years.
I get you. Well, I'll tell you, the stuff with on Bishop Herrmann, made me remember and think someday we'll have to have a talk offline about him. If I'm not mistaken, around the same time that he helped to found the food bank, I believe was around also the same time that he, along with County Commissioner Mike Dorian, helped to found the Community Shelter Board as well, back in the mid to late 70s as well. So he was a driving force in a lot of good things. So Matt, if I'm not mistaken, the number of folks that are needing assistance who are working full time in our community is on the rise. And it's gone up over the years. If I'm not mistaken, that's the case, correct?
It was until March 13th, but
well, so what previous to March 13th was that was the case, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
yes,
what was the percentage?
Well, I mean, when I started in all this in the late 80s, most of this were folks that were on public assistance that weren't getting enough benefits and that kind of thing. And now more than half the people we help work. And I think that's the most startling thing. I often said I've said when I took this job, and my dream was to go out of business, that you would no longer need a food bank because you wouldn't need our kind of system. Well, and we get negatively criticized about we're institutionalized, and I'm like, well, thank God we are right now, because if you didn't have a food bank system and a network like we have right now, you wouldn't be able to feed all these people that have lost their job through no fault of their own. But what we really know out of all this, and this is where I really, the other big shift in our work was the yes and strategy of saying, yes, we'll feed you today, and we want to co-create a community where everyone thrives. Therefore, we got to go upstream and look at the root causes of why people are hungry. One of those root causes is the fact that wages are so depressed for people at the bottom of the wage scale. If they talk about 40% of America makes less than $12 or $13 an hour, 40% of America can't pay a $400 emergency bill. Well, we've had a huge 40-year history of a productivity gap where wages or where productivity and profitability have gone up 77% and wages have gone up 12. That gap has created a whole new population of people who are playing by all the rules, struggling, coddling together, sometimes 2 or 3 part-time jobs to make enough money to live on. And that's what we see, when the recession hit in 07, 08, the number of people living below 200% of poverty. So for your viewers, that's 40,000 for a family of 3, 23,000 for a single person. That's the income cap at the top. That went up to 400,000 people and slightly above, and so did the unemployment rate. Now the unemployment rate came back down to full employment, but that level of people didn't come down. And so roughly a third of Franklin County lives below 200% of poverty pre-COVID-13 or COVID-19. So for me, that became and the team here and our board in particular said, how do we start talking about those issues? So 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, we went to $15 an hour at the food bank and said, and I said, we're going to set the tone, and had a lot of conversations as you've had with corporate partners and saying, we got to start paying attention to the wages at the bottom, because these people are playing by all the rules, but they can't pay the bills. And at the end of the day, they need food because they can't afford the rent that they're paying, or it's a significant portion of their income, and therefore don't have other resources. So for us, that's foundational now to our work, understanding those issues. And I think that's the beauty of what you guys have been at. That's why I cannot thank you enough for what you and the Franklin County Health Department just did around understanding it. The root cause of ending poverty is racism. And we've got to address that issue. We've got to be willing to have those conversations, and we're afraid of it. And I think wages and racism are 2 foundational issues we got to begin to address.
So the reason that I asked the question was because, I want to take a minute. I mentioned earlier, you and I have known each other for forever. Frankly, I don't know if you remember this, but you offered me a job at one point to come work with you at City Hall. I was pretty much stuck in my ways at the state at the time, and I still should thank you all these years later for offering me the job that I didn't take, but I apologize again. But what the reason I asked you the question is I want to thank you, take a minute here and thank you publicly on this show for the work the most significant work that Matt and I have done together in all the years that we've known each other is the work that we're doing together right now. And I want to take a minute to thank him for this. The county commissioners started working on community-wide efforts to put a stop to hopefully begin to reverse a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots in this community. Matt referenced it just a few seconds ago. Before the outbreak, we had about a 4% unemployment rate in this community, but at the same time, 1 in 6, or about 17% of this community were living in poverty. About 24.5% of children in this community were living in poverty. The rate among African Americans in this community was even worse at 33%. We know we can't succeed in this community unless we all succeed. And the Franklin County Commissioners have made a commitment over the years, my colleagues and I, that that's important. It's important to all of us, regardless of the color of your skin. And you shouldn't have to, your success in this community shouldn't be based on your zip code. Your health shouldn't be based on your zip code. Your prosperity shouldn't be based on your zip code. So we commissioned a team of business leaders, community leaders, nonprofits, many others to see what we could do about this problem. We came together, and Mr. Habash is a co-chair along with Trudy Bartley from OSU. And this poverty initiative is called the Rise Together blueprint that we've created. It's an initiative that's now dedicated to a lot more than just making sure people have enough to eat. It's about doing what we can to help move people from poverty to the middle class. He's also been heavily involved in how we can collectively begin to break the cycle of poverty. And I wanted to make sure we took a second to recognize him on the show for those efforts, because that goes way beyond just making sure that people have something to eat. And Matt has dedicated his entire life, adult life, to making sure folks have enough to eat, which is unbelievable. But now he's helping us do more than that. And so I wanted to make sure we took a minute to recognize him for that. So thank you, Matt.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. Thank you.
So a couple more things. I want to remind folks that are watching us on Facebook Live to send in their questions. I'm asking all the questions here. But a couple of things. How big is your staff there?
When I started, it was 6, so now it's 140. I mean, that's the good and the bad of all of this. We don't celebrate getting bigger and bigger, unfortunately. But right now, it's most of those folks work here at the facility in Grove City, but we also run a restaurant at the Reeve Avenue Center and feed kids out there. And we've got a number of SNAP outreach workers that are positioned around the county and around the rest of the 19 counties that we serve to help people sign up for SNAP. And during COVID, I've also stepped into helping people do unemployment applications. So they got to do it via virtually and Zoom and all kinds of new ways instead of face-to-face. But we're really trying to assist people to access the benefits they are eligible for and entitled to, so that they can go to my ultimate goal is you go to the grocery store and buy your own food. That's my definition of success. It's not how much food can I put out the door. We really want to understand that. And I think, for viewers, if you don't, the county really leads the efforts in terms of all of the government responses when it comes to all of these benefit programs. They run through the county administration, and to bring together a group of people around Rise Together, for us, that's now we say yes and that's the and part of our work. How do we end hunger for people by ending poverty and ending racism? So it's natural now for us to say we're going to step into that work, and we really want to succeed that way. So people they have their own money, they have a better paying job, they have education. It's why we put a MidOhio market on Columbus State's campus. And for us, it was around helping those 30-year-olds. I mean, Dr. Harrison talks about 6,000 to 7,000 students a year quit after 1 of 2 years of a certification process. Halfway done, they quit because life happened to them. They can't afford, they got to get another job, something's happened. And so we're coming together using the Rise Together kind of thinking about how do we look at this from a whole person perspective, not from our silos of hunger and healthcare and housing and transportation and child. We do really good work in those lanes, and we're now saying we got to come together. So putting a market on campus was around helping students succeed. The food is the draw to say, look, make sure you have enough to eat, and continue your education, because as Dr. Harrison likes to say, I want to get you your second job, which is a much higher paying job. So it's in those kind of ways that we're now coming together using our team from here as well as their team. And our vision is to have 15 of these MidOhio markets, and that we did that so that we could rebrand them, that you didn't have the stigma. We've had a client say to us, I can't afford to shop at a food pantry. And we're like, whoa, what does that mean? I got to take a day off of work. It cost me $80. I get to $10 an hour, and I got to shop because the pantry is only open in my neighborhood when I'm working. And we're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. And so getting MidOhio markets that are open to give you a sense of success. The market in Reynoldsburg, which believe it or not is a very high need area. It's a lot of distribution center jobs, lower paying jobs. They used to do about 450 families a month. They're now doing 1,100 families a week. This was pre-COVID, and it's come in. It looks like a grocery store. You get welcomed in. Come get the food you can use that week. It's fresh food. None of us, our model is give you a 3-day supply of food at the end of the month. Well, if we gave you produce and milk, and that's all we gave it to you, wouldn't taste very good over the next 30 days if you were trying to stretch it. So for us, this new model takes advantage of surplus produce, takes advantage of surplus dairy products, makes them readily available. We want you coming back. And then we have the opportunity to connect. If you have other challenges and issues, connect you to job centers, the workforce development, but whatever it is. English as a second language on Morris Road. Those are the kinds of things. So we envision about 15 of these markets opening up. We've got 2 open now, and we're looking for additional sites. And they'll be open 30 to 40 hours a week, so people can shop when it's convenient for them. We want them coming, and we're going to measure with our healthcare partners the impact of them coming more often. And we can hopefully convince healthcare that they could help pay for some of this over the long haul, so we can do more of it as a very low cost strategy. So it's a whole new way of our thinking and really what we're trying to do. And we're excited about that opportunity going forward with our partners, with the county, with the city, and a lot of our corporate partners as well to actualize that over the next couple of years.
So Matt, you mentioned the English as a second language, and you mentioned some of our new Americans. Do you have product or produce or any other types of product in your pantries that are specific to new Americans?
Yes, that's an interesting question, because that's one of the challenges. We're constantly asking them. So whether it's Arleta of Guadalupe on the west side, or even the market at Hart, at Reynoldsburg, the MidOhio market, what are your customers asking for? Because if we can find it in the surplus system, then we can earmark it to specific places. One of the things that happens in the world of USDA is they've got this thing called Section 32 bonus commodity purchases. So they go into the marketplace and buy up surplus food, and then they give it to us, and they pay everybody else. When it gets to the food bank, they say, "Be grateful, charity, we're giving you free food. You figure out how to distribute it and pay for it." So that's always, charities always get left out in their strategy, but we end up doing the bulk of the work. But what happened was they bought up the lentil market, the garbanzo bean market, the split pea market last year, and we got semis and semis and semis of that. Well, it just so happens that the Nepali and the Bhutanese communities and all that, that's a staple for them. So that has gone into those communities, and it's really been their staple food that they use to cook a lot of meals from, and we have plenty of it. So it's those kind of things to say, why would you take that much of garbanzo beans or split peas or lentils? Well, those communities use it as a staple. So for us, it's worked out really well. Other food banks that don't have, people don't realize how many, the Somali population, how big it is in this community, the Bhutanese, it's big, and they don't realize that.
There's also a lot of vegetarians in that community, and I know my daughter's a vegetarian. Mm-hmm. Lentils and garbanzos, and those are all. That's all a part of that diet. So,
yep. So we try to be very sensitive to that in terms of looking for what we can bring in, because we bring in produce from all over America. So if there's items that are in there, so we're learning from them. What are they looking for? And we're going to see in the surplus, whether it's in Texas or California or Florida, once it's made available, we hire trucks and bring it here.
That's great.
And then earmark the distributions where they need to go.
I have a question from a viewer, okay. Denise Smith, and I believe this would be a very common question for you, Matt. Denise Smith would like to know, what does an individual need in order to use the food bank? I have a relative that hasn't had an income since March.
Right now, you have no barrier income-wise whatsoever. Due to the disaster declarations by the state, anybody is eligible. And I really want to stress that with all the viewers. Please tell, budgets get blown up, not because people go to zero income like this example, but 2 incomes in a household and one goes away, it blows your budget up, and we want people to know they're eligible to get food. So please, they just need to come, bring an ID with them. And we've got a no-touch, shortly, we're going to have an app available where they can pre-register themselves, put their own information in, even schedule an appointment to pick up food. So it's all coming very quickly. We've had a lot of help from Smart Columbus and those folks helping us build out a new process and a new procedure that we can use to keep everybody safe, pre-register, and get them to access food. So we're taking advantage of the disaster to really create new systems. But basically, it used to be 200% of poverty. That's the $40,000 for a family of three or 20,000 a single. They're eligible, and all they need to do is produce an ID. When they come, just tell us who they are, and they will get food. And
So
we're
Matt,
open here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you have a number or a website for somebody to reach out to?
Yeah, if you go to MidOhioFoodBank.org, O-R-G, it'll tell you where pantries are in your neighborhood, the bigger ones that are walk-in pantries. So you don't even have to call hands-on or get an appointment, to one. You don't have to do any of that. These are the biggest pantries, open all the time. Our pantry down here takes people from all over the county and beyond. So anybody that shows up down here, we do as many as 750 cars on a Saturday in here. And people are welcome to come. You get served very fast. You come down here because the guards here, and they pride themselves on serving a car every 32 seconds. So they're quick.
So MidOhioFoodbank.org.
Mhm.
If somebody's looking to access some sort of assistance, that's where they go. Now, what if somebody's looking to make a donation? Because you need folks to know how to do that as well.
Same thing. Go to MidOhioFoodBank.org, and there's a donate button right on there. There's some text to give programs being run by the TV stations right now as well. So if you're watching any of those, you're on their websites. You can do it very simply from there. If you go to a Kroger grocery store, you can make a donation there. So it's really been designed, to encourage people both. But our website really is a place to find out where to get food, and also to make it very easy for you to donate if you wish to help, because we're going to need all the help we can get. My best guess is we're planning on a 2-year runway at about 30 to 40% more food than we did prior to March 13th. So it's go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're taking a very long view of this. I mean, there's a healthcare crisis. We're not going to be out of that anytime soon. Hopefully there aren't rebounds. There are a lot of speculation about what that looks like. I'll leave that to the folks that are experts. But the reality of it is, we're anticipating this is going to be a very slow economic recovery. If we got double-digit unemployment, we think that's going to be around for quite a while. And if that's the case, we want people to understand we're going to do everything we can to make sure we have food available for them.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got about 20 minutes left or so, and I want to remind the viewers, I got plenty of questions here. I can talk to Matt. Matt and I can talk about this stuff for another 2-3 hours. I don't think Facebook's going to be okay with that, but we can talk about this for the rest of the day. And I got plenty of questions for him. That's not the point. I would rather not have to ask any more of these questions. I'd like for folks on Facebook to send us as many questions as you have. So if you got questions, go ahead and just post them up on Facebook, and we'll take viewers' questions for the rest of the time. But I've got plenty, so we can keep doing that. But I want to make, Matt, I've also got what is this www.feedingamerica.org? What is that all about?
Okay. Feeding America is the name of our national network of food banks. So there are some 200 food banks in that network. We go through a very rigorous set of standards to be part of their network. So there are 12 food banks in Ohio that are part of that network. We divide up the 88 counties. So we have 20 of them. At one point in my early days, I had 51 of them. But we started some food banks in the Southeast Ohio and Springfield and Lima and places. So those counties partner agencies, and the people could get served out of there directly without having to come to Columbus or us trucking food that far. But it really is designed to work on, they do a couple things really. Work with the national manufacturers to find food, and now working on, donations at a very large level, and then passing those dollars on through to food banks. And then they work really hard on advocacy in Washington with us, really getting people in Washington to understand what's the true story of what's going on throughout, over 3,000 counties in the United States. So for us, that's the role they play. They're a network. Our operation is all local. I have a board of 23 people, and they make all of the strategic decisions along with my executive team in terms of how we operate. We have a contractual relationship with them. But if you see that and you make a donation to they're passing on 100% of all donations in COVID back out to food banks as they understand what the need is. They help us acquire food, even purchase food right now, helping us find it. They understand the produce situation across the United States, and they help us understand where the produce is at, even arranging the transportation if we need it and can't do it ourselves. A lot of food banks, we're somewhere between the 13th and 15th largest food bank in the United States, and as I said, the 5th largest distributing produce. But most food banks are tiny. They're small. They do a couple million pounds a year, so they need a lot of help. So making sure people get fed, in very rural parts of the state. We have a very unique territory, and you think about it. We got this amazing growing metropolitan area, Central Ohio, Franklin County, and the growth of all of that. We have 9 Appalachian counties in this 20-county area. I grew up in Steubenville, and we go all the way to there, distribute food. And you got these cities that are struggling in Steubenville and Cambridge and Zanesville, and the economies over there don't look like the economy here in Franklin County. And so that's, for us, we're a microcosm of the country. And so when we do things, it has an impact on how to teach others what to do.
Yeah. So do you guys receive food donations directly from farmers? From
Yes.
corporations?
That's a big part of our work now. I mean, I like to say I have a farm, and in its best year when we had it at Clearfield down on the south side, before we shut that one down, we grew about 45,000 pounds of produce. And that year we gave away 30 million pounds of produce. So we depend very heavily on farmers, first here in Ohio, using the dollars from the state to clear the agricultural surplus that's available here. And then we go across the entire United States. So we've pulled a lot of product out of California, where somewhere between 40 and 50% of the produce in the United States is grown. Texas has surplus, Florida, and they have different growing seasons. So the sweet potatoes out of the Carolinas, wherever it's at, it gets either made available to us because a broker's called us and told us they have surplus, or another food bank calls and tells us. We have a mixing center in Indianapolis to help a lot of the smaller food banks that can't take. We take everything by the semi-load because we can move that much product. But a lot of small food banks need a mixture of products because they can't move it and it's going to go bad before they can distribute it all. So that we put the mixing center in Indianapolis to help a lot of the food banks do it from there. And that's really been a success for the small food banks. But for us, produce is now, we're known as the big produce because we had the strategy back in 2011. And because we're so big, we're so much bigger in how much fresh food we move than where we probably should be in relationship to food banks around the country, particularly in the growing states. Ohio is not considered a growing state of produce, even though agriculture is our #1 industry as a state. It's commodity agriculture in a lot of ways, soybeans and corn and things used for other purposes. But for us, it's like, who's got it? How fresh is it? Can we get it here? What's it going to cost us to get it out of the fields? And or what's the transportation bill? So we often say donated produce is not free. If I got to pay it, picking and packing costs, and then I got to transport it all the way from California, that produce by the time it gets here, but it's still about 21 cents a pound on average. That's a lot cheaper than you can buy it in the grocery store. So that's how we're able to really take advantage of the donations, take advantage of the surplus food in this country. And now we're arguing, and rightly so, that we're having a health impact by using surplus food, feeding people who can't afford to buy this in a grocery store. And even if the grocery store was in their neighborhood, doesn't mean they're buying fresh produce because it's too expensive and it's perishable. It's risky.
Fresh produce is oftentimes the most expensive part of my grocery bill.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of perishability to it. As one of my staff members said, he calls it the crisper of good intentions. We all have one in our refrigerator, and life happens to you, and all of a sudden you got slimy spinach and lettuce and things go bad, squishy cucumbers, because you didn't use it. We all do that, and so we don't. That's why we want people coming back and coming more frequently, taking what they can use right away, because life's going to happen to you. None of us go home and cook every night, chop up vegetables and do it every night.
Oh, I do.
You're it. You quit eating in restaurants. I gotta believe
no,
that.
But no, believe me, we do carry out here because we're trying to support our friends in the restaurant industry, but especially at this time. But it's what I do. I cook. I like to cook. I didn't get. This is not the body of a guy who don't like to cook. But but no, I understand the fresh produce thing because my daughter's a vegetarian. We buy a lot of fresh produce, and then, you have all the intention in the world, and then it just, you find, oh, what happened to that batch of kale? So I get it. I understand. So Larry, here's an issue. This one is, if you've been on it, and I'm not saying that you have, but if anybody that's been on any of our 9 a.m. Administrative briefing sessions in the morning knows that this is a major pet peeve of mine. Everybody's trying to figure out how we can get this economy moving again. We've been, especially with the issue of maintaining social distancing, we've rushed to open up this economy, open up the state of Ohio at a lightning's pace. And we've done this, understandably, we've done this, but we've also done it without, I think, much regard for the messaging and communication that it was necessary to make this happen. And so folks are very excited to have the economy open again. And then there's all these issues and conversations around the idea of whether or not to wear a mask, and, proper education and understanding around masks and social distancing. And so we have these issues and conversations around stay at home, the stay at home order, and folks are, rushing back into the economy, not wearing, half the people not wearing a mask or so, people not understanding properly about social distancing. And not understanding the opening and all the conversations around the opening of the economy, because we opened the economy very rapidly without all the guidelines and the understanding of all the guidelines that were necessary when we did all this. And we've seen the problems, with, around, issues with the opening of restaurants and bars and patios and things of that nature. We've seen it on the news. We're starting to see more of it. And I'm just wondering what you're seeing, or the concerns that you may, what you're seeing, or B, the concerns that you might have going forward as it relates to the pantries. And are you worried about this, in your own world, as it relates to the possibility of a second wave?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One of the, we talk a lot in our world about, 70% of our agencies are all volunteer run, 70% of their volunteers are all senior citizens. So, but what we forget in all of that, besides wanting the seniors to be safe, is a lot of our volunteers are corporate volunteers, and particularly here at the food bank when we're packing up food and the size of our operation at the pantry that's here. And we're talking to folks about, our biggest ones are like, we may not be able to come back and volunteer till the fall. In which case, and if the guard leaves, I think the guards has a chance now based on yesterday's conversation that it may stay through July now instead of June. Hopefully that's true. I'm also sensitive to those guards people have other jobs. Some of them probably were making a lot more money, and depending on their employer, they may or may not be getting paid. So all of that plays into this. So for us, safety is the number one issue from the day we started this in March. We hired a second cleaning company in here to clean on top of my cleaning company that's in the building so that we could do additional cleaning. We've only had one day we had to close our pantry because we had one person test positive and we didn't want to take a chance. So we shut it down and cleaned it again. We temperature check everybody that walks into this building. I won't walk into any establishment anywhere without a mask on. I just think you're protecting yourself and you're getting protected from others. So I would encourage everybody. This is not a violation of your liberties. This is a protection mechanism for yourself. If you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for everybody else you live with, because you don't know what you're bringing back, and contaminating, I tell all my teammates, love you dearly. And I know the bars are back open, but please use a lot of discretion about what you do. Because if you get sick and you bring it into this building, we may have to shut the building down. So I'm encouraged. I can't police what my team does, but I just say, look, be smart about it, and I get it. Everybody's cooped up, and I had the beauty of my kids are grown and gone, and I love my granddaughters and I like to see them more than I see them. But But the reality of it is people that are being the teacher right now and the childcare person right now, on top of trying to work, but they're working from home, it's stressful. And, we understand that, but if we don't protect, there is no vaccine and there's no vaccine coming anytime soon, for the reopening that we're doing. The only way it's going to work is if we all use the utmost caution and discretion.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, I got a couple of questions. We're under 10 minutes now. We got about 7 minutes left on time. We might go a tiny bit over. But I got a couple of questions from folks here, so I want to throw these in, and then we need to wrap up. So Patricia Reinhardt asks, I manage a pantry on the east side. I've noticed that over the last 2 weeks that the demand for assistance has dropped compared to the peak in April. Is this a trend across the pantries, or is it a result of stimulus or unemployment checks coming in?
Yeah, our best speculation is some of that is as a result of the stimulus dollars that have come in and given people. I mean, get it. People would prefer, and particularly if you've never done this before, to go back to the grocery store. And it's encouraging. It's why I didn't encourage food drives, when this first started, because I didn't want to drain the grocery stores any more than they already were getting drained by people buying everything up. We saw a big drop in our donations from grocery stores for a while because they didn't have any surplus left in the stores that they didn't use. And so I'm encouraging people. But yeah, I think there's a little bit of it's that. Our numbers have plateaued. They haven't dropped when you look at the whole system across it. It's plateaued at a 30% increase. So it's not spiking the way it used to. And I'm hopeful as people get called back to work, in various avenues, that's going to help. But I don't see the numbers coming back down from that plateau. I don't think they're going to spike any worse. And I do think there was a bump because of the stimulus and some unemployment checks as all that stuff finally started to happen, people started to have their own dollars. And their first thing is always to use those dollars to go to the grocery store. If you had choices you got to make between paying rent and paying utility bills, use your dollars there. And if you need flexible help with food, please come get it. That's the thing. That's looking at your budget holistically. We've got food to help you. You can get produce. You can get a lot of things from us that'll help. And there's going to be a lot of food coming from the government. I don't know what it is yet, so it's hard to talk about what it looks like yet. But until they get it, but there's a lot of money in the stimulus bill that's going to at least give us food. They're not giving us a whole lot of money to handle it and distribute it, but at least the food's going to be there. So I want people to understand that, and they should access it because it's your government tax dollars at work. It's trying to help the farmers. We got food, and you can stretch your budget a little further.
John Skaggs is asking how a family or individuals can receive prepared meals. He's also inquiring about the percentage of raw ingredients that are in the mix. Some folks have no kitchen to prepare the food.
It's part of the reason why we went into the purchasing of the food that we bought. That none of that's raw. It's all canned goods and dry goods and cereal kinds of things. So we're going to get a lot of dairy products. There was a milk crisis long before COVID, and so there's a lot of surplus milk in the system. Then now you shut down all the schools, and there's a lot more surplus milk. But to John's question, he's a good friend. He's done a lot of good kitchen work. He's an amazing chef. But the reality of it is we went and bought canned goods. We've got an amazing donation coming this weekend from Bob Evans, who's given all that wonderful macaroni and cheese and mashed potatoes they have. We're going to get 28 pallets of that product and make available. So that's a heat and serve as a good side vegetable. We've got cooked meat already. We've got hamburgers. So we've got some items you have to prepare. But a lot of it can be heat and serve. All the canned goods are heat and serve kind of products. So because we recognized that, this was going to be a challenge. And we wanted to have enough foods across the menu so that people had access to it. So there is food there right now. The pantries know exactly what to do with all the dry packaged canned goods that we have. They've been good at that over the years. So we've introduced a lot more fresh stuff to them, which they've had to adjust to over the last 10 years. But the canned goods, they know what to do, and they'll be readily available. And we'll know shortly with the federal government. Hopefully they buy good food that we can use, and they don't give me a bunch of surplus nuts and figs and dates and other kinds of things that happen from time to time.
Good. All right. So before we wrap up here, I got a few more softballs for you. Softballs, so you can have fond memories of our time here on Facebook Live, and you can know that I was know that I was very, very good to you, and when I see you in the future. So does the food bank have any special groups that, or any work that they do with special groups or projects so that kids can still receive food while school is not in session? This is obviously, as a county commissioner, this is something that's very important to us, very near and dear to us. We're always worried about kids getting meals, because when school's not in session, there's a lot of kids that just don't get food. So this is a big deal. You and I have talked about this many times.
So a couple things. One is we're starting with summer feeding shortly in June, and we're going to be doing about 2,000 meals a day out of here. It's new. So that's a new addition to what a lot of other folks are already doing. City Recreation and Parks is the big summer feeder in Franklin County. But we're going to partner with them and some other folks to do that. We've also, with the schools that we're going on right now, both with Southwest, we're still cooking for preparing some food for them to distribute. And we sent produce. We sent produce to all of the school sites that are distributing food there. And then we went and bought a lot of, in the world of summer feeding and after school meal feeding, you also prepare for the blizzard packs in the day. So we bought a lot of prepared foods that kids like to eat, snap top, fruits and things that'll open up. And we acquired that, and we're passing that out as well. And I'm hopeful that they keep the relaxation of the rules like they did with schools for summer feeding. Because if they do that, then we can pull up and distribute food in an apartment complex. We don't have to have it come into a program, sit down, watch you eat it, and you could actually take it back inside. We could, serve a lot of kids faster that way as well. So we're waiting to see if those are going to be the new rules for the summer, where we can do a lot more of that. But we've tried that. We worked really closely with Columbus Schools, understanding it. We have a great relationship, even up in Marion County, they were using their buses to distribute their meals, because their bus stops are the driveways of the kids at the end of the rural road. So because they did that, we were able to give them some additional food to hand out to those families by using their delivery system. It works really well you can't do that here when all the kids are congregating at a bus stop, and then you don't have social distancing, and then they got to carry it back to their house. So it's harder in an urban area than it is, believe it or not, in a rural area to use some of the strategies. But for us, 33% of all the food we give out goes to kids. When you talk about those millions and millions of pounds. So we want to make sure they have enough food. They have the right foods. They have foods they eat. That's why I was excited about the Bob Evans donation. It's macaroni and cheese. That's probably at the top of the list of things the kids, will eat as a could be a main meal, in addition to chicken nuggets and pizzas and all the other wonderful things that they like to eat. But if you can get them to eat fresh vegetables and coming up with creative ways. We're always looking for recipes and creative ways that families have gotten their kids to try broccoli, try carrots, try this, because we have it.
My 4 kids at different points in their lives, their entire food pyramid was, pizza, macaroni and cheese, cheeseburger, grilled cheese. That was, at different points.
I can relate to that. Back in the day, a long time since my kids were little. But
chicken nuggets was another one. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, but that's the other thing. Here's one that works for you. My wife instituted with all these kids what we refer to as no thank you bites. Yeah, you had to try everything. So whatever gourmet meal I might have made, my wife instituted the no thank you bite. And so all the kids had to try everything. And that's how all of them got past all of their nasty food pyramid days, was they tasted everything, and eventually they decided they liked it. Now I got a bunch of foodies in my house. So anyway, well, that's great stuff. Now here's another one, then we'll get moving on. So we've been asking everybody this question. So during these times, we're always trying to promo all of our local businesses, our love local, eat local, shop local, tip local. So who have you been? We got a lot of folks out there struggling. So who have you been frequenting during the crisis, during the outbreak here? You got any favorite places, either takeout or coffee shops, restaurants, pizza joints, coffee shops that you're hitting up?
Yep. So for me, with the coffee in particular, we like Highlander grog coffee. So we go to Stops and get that and just pick that up and take that home. That's our staple in terms of our favorite coffee. So we're always, I used to live down by Grandview. So I was always down in that particular shop, really trying to take advantage of that. I live up north, so I've hit, as we talked about Craft House and Cobell, which I think Cobell is also one of their restaurants now, or at least the management of. So we frequent those. Aladdin's, we like Mediterranean food, so we hit Aladdin's operations,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we like barbecue, so we're always at City Barbecue. Jenny's and Graders have ability to get their food, so we've tapped into both of those. That's not good for my waistline. And we're pizza eaters, so I get in trouble by Jane if I didn't mention Donato's because they happen to have a cauliflower, crusted pizza, which I like. But I'm a big Dewey's fan, and as you know, I'm from Steubenville, so it's always a shout out to DeCarlo's because that's still my favorite pizza because I grew up eating it. So
Well, like
big
I
on
said,
pizza shop and the nugget. I mean, any kind of wing place I can find to get my hands on. That's the other thing I'll eat.
well, like I said, the kids and I are going to try that DeCarlo's this weekend. Yeah, Jane, I got to tell you, Jane, Brody, Abel, they might have found the gold mine there with that cauliflower pizza.
Mm-hmm.
We tried that last week. Wow, I was blown away by how good that thing was. We called to pick up some subs last week, and that stuff's fantastic. Well, I grew up with all the families in town who have the fantastic homemade pizza joints. So anybody ever needs a pizza shop recommendation from me, I grew up with all those folks. But yeah, Donato's is always a good thing as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So it's time to close up. Let me give you one last shot, and then I'm going to close up. Talk to us about your roundup program at Kroger.
So Kroger for a very long time has had a roundup program where they round up, for MidOhio Food Bank, they round up for food banks in general. They have now instituted that as a national strategy across all of their banners. It's the largest or second largest, depending on how you count, food grocery store in the country. And they have been immensely helpful to us and to our partner agencies. So, one of the things we pay close attention to is, making sure our agencies have the resources to stay open. So Roundup, we've managed in the past for Kroger. They're doing it centrally out of Cincinnati now, but in the past, we managed that so we could pass those dollars on to our partners across all of our counties. So they had some additional money. Even the Jeff Bezos money that we received, we got about $540,000 out of that $100 million gift he made to Feeding America. We passed on almost all that money to our partner agencies. So they had no fees, no transportation bills. A lot of these are churches, faith-based organizations, and there's not a big basket collection going on right now. So we wanted to make sure they have the resources if they're paying people to pay them, acquire things we didn't give them, operate, pay the rent bill, light bill, et cetera. So, and Roundup does the same thing. It really is around making sure that all of our, we have 680 partners, and about half of those are here in Franklin County, and they do amazing work. We couldn't do what we do without them. And for us, it really is a recognition that those resources, and Kroger gave us money to innovate. So that when I talked about, potentially having a new app that's going to be available for people to self-register, pre-register, put their own information into the system, they gave us dollars to innovate around that space, as well. So Kroger's been our biggest partner and our longest partner in the food world. We're blessed to have them. The very first donation that came to this food bank in 1980 was Kroger milk. So they've been around from the beginning and donating food, donating technology, capability, help, as well as money. So we couldn't do what we do without them as a grocery partner.
Well, it's great. We do it every time we go to Kroger, but I got to tell you, you should get with Kroger and remind them to remind their cashiers, because we usually have to remind the cashiers.
You have to right now. Everybody's afraid you're further away than you used to be from that cashier with the plexiglass.
Yeah. It's a great program. We love it. We do it every time. So, Matt, thank you so much for being on today. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you doing all that you do for the community. You're one of our gems, one of our great assets. I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
I also want to thank Jamie for doing our signing today. Jamie, appreciate you again. It's time to close up. You can find a lot of the information that we talked about today on commissioners.franklincounty.ohio.gov/COVID-19. You can also go to www.midohiofoodbank.org a lot of this stuff or you can go back and scroll back through Facebook Live, and it'll all be back there as well. We're going to continue to host these commissioners' conversations, so keep watching for the details. We always post that information on all of our social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Nextdoor. Of course, we want to reach out to as many of our friends and residents as possible. So if you're talking to friends and neighbors, tell them about that we'll be streaming these conversations on a regular basis, and we'll be posting them as well on our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm Commission President John O'Grady of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners, along with Matt Habash, the Executive Director of the MidOhio Foodbank. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. And remember, we're all in this together. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.